This episode of SESSLERS Something is brought to you by Full Sail University. All right, it's still been a slowish type week. Yes, there's MPD, figures that are out there. Sony's doing well, Microsoft is doing well, Nintendo is doing fine with the 3DS. But you know what, I don't feel like talking about that. There was one other interesting thing that I knew kind of flared up while I had my time away and I was trying to unplug. I was checking Twitter here and there to see what the hubbub was, but I was just not interacting with the world because the world is scary. And that was the whole Titanfall thing. It was announced that there's 6-on-6 for the multiplayer, and some people were very upset. They thought it should be higher. I think that issue actually has kind of been resolved. Most people, myself included, who have been at a PAX or an E3, had a chance to play it. Pretty much to say like, it doesn't matter. That's not the issue with the game if there is an issue with the game. But it did highlight something that kind of goes back to when I stepped in the steaming pile of shit that was the resolution argument. That was fun. But that we're looking at next gen is to deliver bigger. It's a better resolution. We can have 10 times more characters on the screen. We can now do levels that are as big as 3 games put together. It's that typical kind of corporate talking point to get someone excited, that kind of, bellwether, that point. And I think it really does kind of skew what is good and what is possible, and kind of, yes, you can have bigger levels, but it's a lot more complicated than that. I think a good way of looking at this, bigger is only better. Let's take a look at the Hummer. The Hummer, what was this, the 90s? Oil was relatively cheap. People wanted big SUVs. They wanted these big cars. It was like, oh yeah, my big thing, it's out on the road. Then oil got really, really expensive, and suddenly you had a huge problem on your hand. Bigger, not exactly better. Now, here in a game way, years and years ago, I can't remember the year, Banjo-Tooie is supposed to be coming out. I'm at E3, and I'm seeing it for the first time at the Nintendo booth. And the first thing that I'm told is it's such a bigger game that the smallest level in Banjo-Tooie is like 5 times bigger than the biggest level in Banjo-Kazooie. And even then I thought, that's not a great idea. And if you play the game, especially with the crappy textures, you can't find which way you're going, and it just feels like there's a lot of filler. And that's what it comes down to. Bigger is possible, but it takes more people, it takes more money to actually fill it all up. And there's obviously ways to work around that. You can have procedurally generated characters. You can have textures. You can have objects. That makes the game less personal. I think maybe one of the best examples, and this is very particular, I think, to a multiplayer argument, John Woo movies. The Killer and Hard Boiled, his 2 masterpieces. A lot of people like to talk about Hard Boiled. It's got these massive action set pieces, and everyone's like, oh my God, there's so many people and so many people die. I prefer The Killer. The best scene that John Woo has ever directed was the two characters in it, Chow Yun-fat and I believe it's Tony Leung, and they're in the house of the blind girl who is shot and she can't see, and she's offering them tea thinking they're friends, and they're holding guns on each other, and it's this perfectly choreographed ballet of them trying to not let her know what's really going on, but not letting the other guy get the drop on him. That's so much more invigorating and so much more exciting. And especially in the case of multiplayer, I don't know if I want more people there. That's just more assholes. You want to have something smaller, something tighter. I think one of the best multiplayer games I played last year was The Last of Us, because then it starts to feel personal. Then it starts to feel a lot more frightening. It's not just filled with a bunch of just kind of heaving masses that are throwing things at each other. That's not a perfect description of what it's going to be like for Titanfall, but that's beside the point. What I'm trying to say is that we need to look at next gen as not just being more crap, but better stuff, better games, more detail, more time for the artist to really kind of bring that full vision to light. If you look at what concept art is and how it always seems to be such a lesser manifestation when it's in the game, that's where we might be able to, see something change in this generation. Not just one big expansive wasteland that's going to take that much longer to try to traverse. All right, before we get to the second half of the show, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor, Full Sail University. Whether you're interested in programming, art and animation, story creation, or even producing a game, there's a game degree program at Full Sail to fit your needs. Full Sail is equipped with professional level game studios and labs where you can work with teams to create a playable game from start to finish. And if you're looking for an online program, Full Sail's Game Art and Game Design Bachelor degree programs give you the ability to earn your degree from everywhere in the world. Visit fullsail.edu/something to learn more. All right, because there isn't a ton of stuff going on, I'm going to answer a question, and this one definitely stood out to me. Could you talk about your thoughts on artists working for free and just for exposure? So I'm assuming this question came from, I got very frustrated and I vented it on Twitter about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago. I have been asked to host an award show. It was actually, I'll just let you know, it was at South by Southwest. It's a for-profit organization, I believe. Anyway, they make a lot of money. I had actually assumed that I wasn't going to get paid, which in retrospect I wish I'd probably thought about that ahead of time. But then it turns out that they also expect me to pay my own way, both flight and my lodging. So now I'm actually paying to work on somebody else's behalf. Yeah, that I was told, well, you're going to get a lot of exposure, and that really just kind of honed in on something. Look, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've given away some time and effort for free, especially to a nonprofit organization or to an academic organization. But for a lot of you guys who are younger that are trying to be or are professional creatives, I think it's a very, very dangerous thing that's happening out there. And the word I like to use is pernicious. It's this idea that what you do, if it doesn't have a product, if it doesn't involve kind of a direct, I'm going to buy this, or you're trading money for other people, that somehow it's not as real. It's not as much of a job. It's somehow ephemeral. And I do believe that if you're an actor, if you're a writer, if you're out there and you're a graphic designer, if you're doing that, you have a trade. You are creating a product. And a lot of people who are on the business side, and trust me, I know this, I was at like G4, they think they're so magical with the keys to the kingdom that they're going to convince you that somehow you can't get anywhere without their assistance. And so you do things for free, and that's for exposure. But the thing is, that exposure may or may not go anywhere, and you've given them not just your product, your work, you've given them your time, and that is the single most valuable thing that you have. If you're working for someone for free, you are not able to work for someone else who will actually give you remuneration. And I know that things are very, very tough out there, but this idea of this culture and this self-perpetuating culture that this stuff isn't as real and that it's something of a hobby and that one day you're going to go off and you're going to get a real job, because I imagine a lot of you guys out there have been told that, it needs to be put to rest. So that is my 2 cents. I'm obviously still bitter about what happened to me, and I can only appreciate for some guy who's really trying to get by and doesn't have another job, that's got to suck a lot.